Hello. The District of Columbia v. Heller, 2008, ruled at a federal level that the Second Amendment protected an individual's right to own a firearm. In 1975, the District of Columbia passed legislation called the Firearm Control Regulation Act. Basically, what it meant was provisions of the code made it illegal to carry an unregistered firearm and prohibited the registration of handguns. Through the chief of police for the DC area could issue 1-year licenses for handguns. The code also contained provisions that required owners of a lawfully registered firearm to keep them unloaded and disassembled or bound by a trigger lock or other similar device, unless the firearms were in a place of business or being used for legal recreational activities. Bottom line, good luck in getting a gun permit. The District of Columbia, these rules applied for your home also. Which now, this brings us to the Heller case. District of Columbia v. Heller, 2008. Dick Anthony Heller was a DC Special Police Officer who was authorized to carry a handgun while on duty. He applied for a 1-year license for a handgun. He wanted to keep in his home for protection. His application was denied by the District of Columbia. Then Mr. Heller filed a lawsuit in the United States District Court for the District of Columbia for denying his application. The court ruled for the District of Columbia. The District Court found the Second Amendment does not create a right to gun ownership, unrelated to a service-organized militia, such as the National Guard. The case was then brought to the Court of Appeals. The court found the Second Amendment does create the right for individual gun ownership and reversed the district court ruling. Now the case was to go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court held in a 5-4 decision with Mr. Heller. They overturned the lower court with Justice Scalia writing for the majority decision. In Justice Scalia's opinion, he has written that the Second Amendment provides a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The two sides in the case have very different interpretations of the amendment. The District of Columbia and the dissenting judges believe that it protects only the right to possess and carry a firearm in connection with militia service. Mr. Heller argues that it protects an individual's right to possess a firearm unconnected with service in a militia and to use that arm for traditional lawful purpose, such as self-defense in the home. In the dissent for Justice Stevens, he states, quote, "The Second Amendment was adopted to protect the right of the people of each of the several states to maintain a well-regulated militia. It was a response to concerns raised during the ratification of the Constitution that the power of Congress to disarm the state militia and create national standing army passed an intolerable threat to the sovereignty of several states. Neither the text of the amendment nor the arguments advanced by its proponents evidenced the slightest interest in limiting any legislation authority to regulated private civilian use of firearms. Specifically, there is no indication that the framers of the amendment intended to enshrine the common law right of self-defense in the Constitution. Justice Stevens also states that, quote, the court would have us believe that over 200 years ago, the framers made a choice to limit the tools available to elected officials, wishing to create civilian uses of weapons and to authorize this court to use the common law processes of case-by-case judicial lawmaking to define the contours of acceptable gun control policy. Absent compelling evidence that is nowhere to be found in the court's opinion, I could not possibly conclude that the framers made such a choice. The Supreme Court held that the district ban on handguns possession in the home violates the Second Amendment, as does its prohibition against rendering any lawful firearm in the home operable for the purpose of immediate self-defense. The Second Amendment was not just for the militia. It was in fact for all Americans to use at home for self-defense. The district must permit Heller to register his handgun and must issue him a license to carry it in the home, assuming he is not disqualified from the exercise of the Second Amendment. The Supreme Court also struck down provisions of the Firearm Control Regulation Act of 1975 as unconstitutional. One thing struck down in the regulations is the provisions that requires all firearms, including rifles and shotguns, to be kept unloaded and disassembled or bound by a trigger lock. Prior to the decision, it also restricted residents from owning handguns, except for those registered prior to 1975. Now, as in for my opinion about this case, that we should have the right to protect ourselves in our own home as well as anywhere we are. Many times, most powerful and or rich people will point to a gun-free society, saying it would be a lot safer without all the guns out there, as most of them have bodyguards with weapons that surround them. Just as recent events have shown us, the House Majority Whip, Stephen Scalise, at a practice ball game was shot along with others by a mentally disturbed man. If it was not for his bodyguards, the Capitol Police, with their weapons, who shot the suspect, many more would have been wounded or killed. I know the old saying, guns don't kill people, people kill people. This is true. And if they don't have guns, they will use knives, bats, and cars, etc. This is not a perfect society, and as such, there are people that will not only in their own life, but ours as well. Those who have had their lives threatened, whether it was with a gun or any other weapon, understand a desire to protect themselves and others. Until there are no more murders, rapes, or batteries, or any other crimes, we should be allowed to defend ourselves. There is another old saying, a police officer is too big to carry in a pocket or a purse. If you feel the need to defend yourself or not to defend yourself, please don't deny me that right. Thank you.